I'm Stephen Sheridan. I'm the CEO of Victorian Farmers Federation, and welcome to our 2020 President and Vice President's Election Forum. It's great to have a good turnout tonight, and I will hand over to our facilitators in a second, but just a couple of preliminaries. The election is closing in 2 weeks, so we've still got plenty of time to vote. It's closing on the 8th of December. Last week we had held our Rural Press Club forum during the day, and this evening we've got tonight's VFF candidates forum. Tonight's session will be facilitated by Stock and Land journalist Jolie Mitchell, who is acting editor, and journalist Bryce Eishold. I'd like to welcome both Jolie and Bryce and thank them for facilitating tonight. So we've got some independence and objectivity to tonight's candidate forum. With that, I'll hand across to Jolie to get things rolling. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Stephen, and thanks to the VFF for hosting tonight's event. Hi everyone, as Stephen said, my name is Jolie Mitchell. I'm the editor of Stock and Land. My colleague Bryce and I are really excited to be able to facilitate tonight's candidates forum. Before we get started, I'll just quickly give you a rundown of how the question and answer process is going to work, and then I'll introduce you to our 4 candidates. For the first half an hour or so, I will be asking all candidates a variety of questions before I pass the microphone over to Bryce, who is going to be taking questions from the audience. If you have any questions at all throughout tonight's forum that you'd like to put to the candidates, please submit them in the Q&A box down the bottom of your screen. Now I'd like to welcome the 4 candidates. First up, I'll introduce the 2 candidates for the VFF president role. First, we have Leonard Valance, who runs a mixed cattle, sheep and cropping enterprise in the Central Mallee. Leonard is also the current president of VFF's livestock. The second candidate running for the VFF presidency is Emma Germano, who is a mixed farmer from South Gippsland, running sheep, beef and horticultural crops. Emma is currently the vice president of the VFF, as well as the current VFF horticultural president. We also have 2 candidates running for the vice presidency. The first is Danielle Crichton, who is a 3rd generation Victorian caged egg farmer, and the second is Robert Campbell, a dairy farmer from southwest Victoria. Thanks to all 4 candidates for joining us tonight. I'd like to kick off the forum by asking all 4 candidates one question, and that is, why are you running for president or vice president, and what goals would you seek to achieve in these roles? Can we start with Leonard, please?
Good evening, everyone. I'm standing as for president because I was asked to by my livestock council to take on a further role in the organisation rather than wandering off and doing other things in life. So once that became known that they were encouraging me to stand, I then got further support from other commodities and thought about it for a very long period of time and weighed it up, and I decided to stand. So the main driver for myself standing is that the declining membership of the VFF over many years and successive boards and presidents has not been addressed. And so I wish to address that by changing the membership format of how you become a member of the VFF and who should be a member of the VFF, whether they be small farmers or large farmers. So that's the key driver, but I'm also very keen to see the commodities strongly represented at the VFF, all commodities, large and small, and also at the national table for the national bodies wherever they reside. So I do have a history with national bodies and have been involved with them as well. So they're my keen driver at this point in time, and to ensure that all farmers have a voice in Victoria.
Great, thank you, Leonard. Emma, can we head to you next?
Sure can. Hi, everyone. I guess I've had the opportunity to be part of the VFF and through some leadership roles over the past 5 years, and I just really believe that the VFF has a huge amount of potential. We have so many resources, particularly in our membership base. Having a look at the database of members, we have members in every corner of Victoria across all of the different commodities. And we should be an army of people who are beating the same drum and making sure that our voices are heard, and that our key role at the VFF is around advocacy. I'd like to see that modernised. I'd like to evolve the organisation in regards to its culture, its corporate governance, and I'd really like to see a reinvigoration of the membership in regards to how we come together as a community and support each other. So basically, I believe that my generation of farmers absolutely need the VFF, and we're probably not as engaged with the VFF as we could be, and I'd like to see a turnaround in that.
Great, thanks, Emma. Danielle.
Hi, so my name is Danielle Crichton. Essentially, I was asked to nominate. So I had a little one about a year and a half ago. So I took a step back from our business, from the day-to-day operations, and I now essentially have the time. So I have the time to give back. We've been members for 15 plus years, our family. My dad's been heavily involved, and I've always been his little PA in the background. So I guess this is my time to step out of his shadow and give back the same way the VFF has given us so much over the last 15 years. I guess for me, it's, it's holding a seat, showing our future generation, which is essentially myself and thousands others, that, we can sit at the VFF and hold certain positions, and definitely our voices are heard. It's promoting the fact that there's a new generation of thought and thinking coming in, and essentially tackling our right to farm over the next generation, which is essentially my daughter. So, I'm here to make sure that we have all the same rights and values that I was instilled with. So yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Robert.
G'day. Leonard, I've been thinking about this for a long time, last 12, 18 months. And I'm really pushed because of the water issues in northern Victoria. We haven't been getting heard. The government's walking all over us, and people are losing their farms, and we need to stand up. And that's my main driver. There's people walking away from farming that shouldn't be, and we've got to reverse that, and reverse it in a hell of a hurry, because this year it's picked up a little bit, but people are still leaving and they shouldn't be, and that's my main driver. But there's also other things coming since, like motorbikes. We're going to lose motorbikes if we don't do something. But yeah, it's a community thing, and we need to stand up and work together, empower all members, and do the right thing by everyone, so that we've got a chance to keep farming. There's a lot of people losing that chance, and if I can do my bit to help and keep them going, well, then I've done a good job. So yeah, that's what motivates me.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll move on to the next question, which is also for all four candidates. So the $49 billion Victorian budget this week included $115 million for agriculture. It included cash to strengthen export ties with the likes of China and Southeast Asia. But some critics believe the budget failed to deliver on key areas in agriculture, such as the Murray Basin Rail project. If your candidacy is successful, what issues will you lobby the state government with? Can we start with Danielle this time, please?
Of course, the harder question. So I'm a caged egg farmer. So essentially a lot of the things that I've worked alongside with the last 4 or 5 years is animal welfare. The sentience issue is a huge one at the moment. And as a caged egg farmer, it's my right to farm. So essentially I was at the forefront of the trespassing inquiry and things like that. So it's making sure that farmers have the right to farm. The husbandry level is where it needs to be to coincide with animal welfare by all means. But essentially they're the issues that I've focused on over the last 4 or 5 years, but that's not to say I'm not going to learn a million things over the next 6 months that I essentially didn't realise were there in the first place, which also need to be fought for. And as Robert said, water's a huge one, and I think we really need to focus on that too in Victoria.
Great, thank you. Robert, can we head to you next, please?
Oh, well, Rails, obviously the big one. The other one's roads. Roads are falling apart in regional Victoria, and they keep doing all this work in Melbourne, and we're getting left behind. If you drive a truck, there's potholes everywhere. Roads are dangerous, and we've really got to lift the game there. Same with rates. We get hammered by rates every year. We need some equity there, and we've got to do whatever we can to lower the cost of production. Production costs are getting out of control, so we've got to do everything in our power to make things easy for us. So, yeah, along those lines.
Emma, could we go to you next, please?
Yeah, interesting you talk about the budget, but we've missed out, rural and regional Victoria has missed out in that budget for years and years on end. And actually, I think that the most important thing that we have to do as a federation is actually change the perception of farmers altogether and actually show what our value is. So it's more about us promoting our wares rather than always, going for with the cap in hand and saying, oh, we want a handout, because the government are making these decisions anyway. When they start to understand our value, and when the people who buy our food promote our value, we're going to see those government decisions change somewhat. At the moment, I think that we're the last to be remembered, and it's just the scraps that we get thrown at the end. All of the infrastructure spend in the last 10 years has been majority of that within the tram lines and the grid lines. So it's actually about promoting what we do and how important we are to the economy and to the Victorian economy, particularly at the moment when we're going through a period of recovery from coronavirus. The amount of jobs that we actually support in our industry, I don't think those things are well enough known. So we can't get into the habit at the Farmers Federation where we only get wins when the right colour of government is in place. We actually have to ensure that when there's possibly a government that understand less about agriculture, that the value is promoted. And then I think that those things might start to change. At the moment, they just know that they can, where their voters lie, and they spend the money where the voters are. So unless we get the voters on our side, I think we're going to be fighting a losing battle. So for me, it's about promoting and connecting with our consumers and our community so that they're actually lobbying for us as well. And politicians aren't as quick to think that it's not going to have an impact if they don't look after the farmers and agriculture.
Thanks, Emma. Leonard.
Thanks. My view has always been that government's role in agriculture is to provide infrastructure for agriculture to function. And that involves water, roads, communication, and rail and port facilities. And I don't believe this budget made anywhere near a dent in any of those issues anywhere. And to add to that is the education and medical care for rural people and regional people. We have a massive shortage of doctors in regional centres, and this needs to be part of the infrastructure package, which enables rural people, not just farmers, it's the support industries that go with the farmers, to promote them and enable them to compete on the world market in whatever product we produce. Now, also the biosecurity at the state level has not had an injection of cash either this time around. And we have massive biosecurity issues in horticulture products being imported into this state and this country. And we also have the risk of swine flu on our borders, and we've just lived through this year, the chicken industry has had the bird flu go through and devastate their industry. So it's been very difficult for those groups for this last 12 months. It's not just the human disease that's been here. And so that's what needs to be promoted as importance to the community and to the government, that we're not here for handouts and assistance. We're here to actually, government money should be spent to enable us to actually function properly.
Great, thank you. There's some great answers there. And just a reminder to the audience too, if you've got any questions, in about 20 minutes or so, we'll be heading to Bryce to take those questions. So there's a little Q&A button down the bottom. Click that and type a question. I'd now like to ask a couple of questions just to the two presidential candidates. The first one is in the VFF's Membership Staff and Victorian Consumers Survey, which was from June 2020, only 40% of members thought the organisation fulfilled its key roles and purpose extremely or very well. What needs to change to make the current membership more satisfied with the job the VFF is doing? Emma, can we start with you, please?
I think we actually have to think about our membership base, and we have to think about that community again. I think sometimes the VFF looks like it's just a small number of voices. And I actually think that what we need to do is promote the other members and make sure that we've got key spokespeople on issues. It's really, issues are best represented by a person and a story, and that's how people relate. And I think that we actually have to make sure that there's enough people telling those stories for us. We also have to ensure that we actually circulate back what the wins are, because sometimes it looks like a headline loss. So if I take the industrial manslaughter bill, for example, like that passage through the Parliament, and it looked like a loss for us because we were lobbying against that, and we were trying to point out all of the things that how that could affect farmers, how we were going to be disproportionately disadvantaged by that legislation coming in. And what people don't realise is that when we sit there and we provide questions when the bills are being read into Parliament and we get politicians to respond on those small issues, we actually create a contingency plan or a backup plan should something go wrong on a farm and someone was to pass away. We've made sure those questions are asked. But when you hear you've just lost and it's gone through, it looks like a loss. And I don't think we do enough to engage our community and ensure that everybody's part of that conversation and they realise what's happened, how it's happened and how it impacts them. And also making sure that the membership is better heard. I think that the quad bike issue is a really good example of how we spend a lot of time doing something and advocating for something, and then when we end up with a result, it has all of these unintended consequences, and subsequently you have people saying the Farmers Federation got it wrong, how did the leaders make this decision? And actually we need to ensure that we've got robust policy setting mechanisms within the organisation so that we're really sure that we've captured what the grassroots farmers want and need, and that it's across the board, and that we've got as many people engaging in that process as possible so that we can feel really confident that the policies that we're setting are the right ones. And then it's not just as simple as let's lobby to government. We also have to do campaigns that actually and we are getting better at doing that at the VFF, but we need to focus more on those campaigns around understanding both for the non-farming community and also our farming community to come on that advocacy journey with us. Sometimes we get the ideas, we take them into head office, it gets called the Ivory Tower, or we get called the Collins Street farmers who are sitting around the board, and it seems like a bit of secret squirrel business to a lot of people. And I think if we opened up that communication and opened up with some transparency around that and had more people seated at the table, that members will start to understand the things that we get right and be able to help us with the things that we're getting not so right or that we can be more effective at.
Great, thanks Emma. Leonard, same question to you.
I think one of the big issues we have is that we need to be able to address the small local issue, whether it be a particular rail line or a particular road or a communication system. And we also have to be able to address the statewide issues and promote the image and the benefits of what we've achieved in negotiating with not only government today, this is with special interest groups as well. And they're as influential on our existence as what government is today. And so we need to be able to communicate with groups of people in regional areas and address their issues. Now, one of the big issues at the moment that people are very upset about is the access to public lease land on rivers and creeks. And that's a huge issue for those people who are directly involved. If you live at Murrabble, it doesn't really affect your life that much because there's no water there. And so, but the people along the Murray River, the McAllister River and all those places, it will be life-changing to the way they have their lives and how they conduct themselves on their farms socially and everything else. And so we have to be able to address those issues quickly and effectively and come to an arrangement with the other special interest groups. And on that particular issue of the river frontages, I'd be quite prepared to sit down and talk to the Greens and the Animal Justice Party and all the other people who want to preserve the environment and not allow people to destroy the good work that Landcare and the farmers have done for the last 40 years on the river frontages. That's where we win our members.
Great, thank you. And a question on a similar note. On the ground, we often hear VFF members are concerned with the membership fees they're required to pay, as well as their return on investment. How can the VFF offer more bang for its buck when people sign on to become a VFF member and support existing members as well? And how do you plan to tackle the VFF's declining membership rate? Leonard, can we start with you this time, please?
Well, the key driver for me standing as president was 12 months ago, the livestock group put to the board of the VFF a proposal to fund the livestock group into the future with a levy-based system on transactions of sheep, goats and cattle. Now, we'd had a preliminary discussions with the government and other politicians, and there was wide support, apprehensive support, but support. But the board did not consider that to be a viable thing, and they dismissed out of hand that it would take too long. Well, the livestock group has proven for the last 10 years that farmers are quite accepting of a part of their transaction levy being used to advocate and provide extension to them and their businesses. And that's been done. And so it's a proven model, and it's been copied from the South Australian model, which encases every commodity in South Australia. And they have some 3,000 members in farmers in South Australia, and about 100 have opted out of the system. And it's not a compulsory levy, you can opt out of it. So it is a viable way forward. And I would also emphasise that the current restructure model for the Cattle Council of Australia is being based on a levy-based system, because it is viewed as the most economical and efficient way of gathering money for the lobby group.
Great, thanks, Leonard. Emma, same question to you.
I think that if members get enough benefits out of the organisation that their membership becomes cost neutral, that financial barrier falls away. There are plenty of group purchasing deals that we could be doing. There's more sponsorship that we can be chasing to ensure that the members actually get those benefits. The biggest issue that we have at the moment, I suppose, is this notion of the free rider effect, where we're going to do advocacy in any case. And so whether you're a member or you're not a member, you get the benefit of the VFF doing the advocacy for you. But we've got some actually really great services at the VFF that actually just need to have, they need to be bolstered, and they need more resources allocated to them. So our industrial relations service at the moment is something that has been acknowledged as a powerhouse at the VFF and has been for some time. We need to make sure that we're actually continuing to keep the resources up to those type of services that we offer to ensure that farmers actually just see the benefit. I also don't think it's reasonable that we have some members at the VFF that pay, $15,000 for their membership. And then other members coming in different streams or different commodity groups that pay, $600 or $700. That to me seems inequitable, because we're actually promoting the free rider effect even within the organisation. So I think a flat membership fee across the board is something that we should be considering, and ensuring that membership fee is not prohibitive, in regards to it being too expensive. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to think about what your strategy is. So if our strategy is that we want to go out there and we want the new generation of farmers, and that new generation of farmers says to us, it's actually a little bit too expensive at the $800 mark. Well, make the membership $400 or $200. We actually need to test the audience and find out what they think is the right amount of money to pay, and then actually put those things into place. Again, the biggest threat that the VFF has is the declining membership. Right now, we say that we represent about 25% of all the farmers across Victoria. If the number one strength of your organisation is the number of members that you have and the percentage of farmers in Victoria that call themselves your members, then why are we not asking our members to promote us? And at the moment, we've got to be doing a good enough job so that those members don't want to drop off, but they actually want to promote that to somebody else. So if that's you get a 40% discount if you refer a friend who doesn't understand the organisation or is not being part of it, those are the types of strategies that we need to be looking at, because what is valuable at the VFF is, we always talk about the dollars, like as if there's not enough money at the VFF, or as if that's the overarching problem that we have. That's just not correct. It's how we utilise those resources that's really important. What's most valuable is that our members, that's the most valuable thing. So we've got to do whatever we need to do to ensure that our membership is reflective of the farming community, that it is engaged with that farming community, that we stand together as one when we speak out as a farming community, because it's the members that actually drive the influence. So all the focus should be on the members, and we should be less concerned about what type of model we need to, what complicated model we need to put in place to ensure financial sustainability. If we've got the members, we will have the financial sustainability, because there's supply partners that want to partner with us. We've got sponsorship options that are available to us. The finances will flow when we're doing a really great job, and that we can hand on heart say we've got the majority of farmers in our fold who believe that the organisation is doing a good job and provides value to them on the farm.
Great, thanks Emma. This question is directed at both presidential candidates as well, and that is, how do you think the Victorian agriculture industry can better improve its relationships with consumers? And if you were elected, what would you do to help? Emma, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think that the face of farmers, and it's not about saying that there's something wrong with people that we stereotypically believe that are farmers, that they are part of the organisation, but we have to make sure that the diversity in the farming industry and across Victoria is actually represented. I think that creates something that consumers can better relate to. I actually think we have to step away from this mentality where we say we're going to educate consumers. People don't want to be educated. That's a pushing activity. We know that people's knowledge about where their food comes from is probably the lowest it's ever been, but the interest in that is probably the highest it's been in some time, particularly around what has happened with coronavirus. Actually, most people really love farmers, but we don't even give them an opportunity to help us. We don't have a call to action to our consumers. And yes, you will get the side benefit of actually being able to share and bring people along on the journey when they have a better relationship with us. So I would like to see a membership model created, or maybe not a membership model, but somewhere that consumers can actually connect with us. Whereas we're always talking to ourselves in the echo chamber, we have to make sure that we're actually speaking in the platforms where our consumers are listening. So better focus on metro and cosmopolitan media is really important, and making sure that we tailor the message. There's a difference between when we're speaking among ourselves as farmers and when we're speaking to our consumers. So I think we have to stop saying we have a right to farm and we can do whatever we want. And we actually have to say consumers have a right to purchase what they like, and where there's a market, farmers will fill it. So it's more about getting the consumers to do that advocacy for us. When we have animal activists come and storm our farms, which is a horrifically traumatic experience for farmers, no one really kicks up too much of a fuss. It ends up being not an outrage that this is what's happening on family farms, but oh, is it right to eat meat? Is it wrong to eat meat? Is the industry transparent, or is it lacking in transparency? And other people start telling our stories for us. When activists storm steak restaurants, there is an absolute uproar, and it's an uproar in the metro media, and that's what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on those people saying, I want to eat steak. I want to believe that the animal has been treated well through its life cycle, but it's got to be the consumers and that third-party endorsement. Because if you ask us, we're always going to say that we're doing a good job. We need that third-party endorsement.
Thanks, Emma. Leonard, same question to you.
I think to enhance the image or the perspective of the farming sector or agriculture in general, the VFF needs to utilise every possible medium we can get our hands on. And there's still mediums being evolved now, electronically, digitally, and we need to not just be out there saying you need to eat food. We need to have the very carefully narrated story around how this food got there, and bring that into people's lives in their common daily thoughts of how that food got to my table, and who grew it, and how they grew it, and where they grew it, and what they grew it on. And that's where we need to share that story. And we have a great story in Australia. We have the most natural agricultural systems in the world, with compared to everywhere else in the world where intensive agriculture outweighs broadacre agriculture and so forth enormously. But that's not to diminish the industrialised agriculture that we have in this country as well. It is as equal footing in the market as everything else. So we need to cultivate the story amongst ourselves and not demean ourselves and move away from the image of the farmers are hard done by and we need a handout or help with something. We're here, we're business people producing food for you and the world, and we are here to do it properly. And that's the image and that's the story we need to have.
Great, thanks, Leonard. Are there any specific regional services or infrastructure improvements that you would like to focus on as president? If so, why? Leonard, can we start with you, please?
For my 4 years on the board, I've been banging on about the idea that there should be a doctor in every town where there's a hospital in Victoria, because there isn't. I regularly visit my doctor, and I seldom see the same doctor twice. So I go about 5 times a year and never see the same doctor. I mean, that's an appalling healthcare standard in a rural area. And my hospital serves a huge area of northwest Victoria. If I go to the Mildura emergency, you sit there for anything up to 6 hours and not see a doctor. I mean, that's third world conditions. And so there's that aspect of it. Then there's the education system, where the education system struggles to get high quality teachers into rural areas and provide them with the amenity as teachers to function, as well as the police force. They really struggle to keep the police force in regional areas so that they're actually effective at fighting against socially unacceptable behaviour, we'll call it, since we're being politically correct. Basically drugs and theft and other misbehaviour. So the police are really struggling. There is just no interest in that, and we need to sell that story into politicians and the broader community that we have. We're not entitled to it, but we can be reasonably expect to have the similar service to the rest of the community.
And Emma.
I think that we need to make sure that our regions are really livable, and we need to really make better rail services around the state. I think people find it, there's a lot of people that are doing the tree change now, and again, driven by coronavirus, we're seeing an increase in people coming into the region. So we've got to make sure that all the infrastructure that people need is available to them in the regions. More specifically in regards to our farming community, we need to make sure that there's the mental health care support there. So as much as there is the really great and positive side of our industry, we actually still have some real challenges when it comes to mental health. And it's also about, I think, making sure that there's resources available so that people can connect as community. The way that the community connects now is very different, and we've got to make sure that the next generation who are still living in the regions, because a lot of people think that they've got to go off to Melbourne to get their job or to get their education, that if they want to go away, that they have an incentive that they actually want to come back. But again, we just don't get the same resources as what our city counterparts get, and we just need to make sure that that's balanced up. We keep talking about decentralisation, but you've got to build it and then the people will come. So that's across the board, whether it's rail, whether it's hospitals, whether it's education, whether it's childcare facilities, all of those things need to be made available to us, just like they're available to the people in the city.
Great, thanks, Emma. I might bring the vice presidential candidates back into this one as well. What do you think the industry can do to increase the amount of young people coming into it and retain young people that are currently in it? Danielle, can we start with you?
Yeah, so I guess changing platforms and things like social media, creating, I guess, an engagement program is something I'd like to see, some type of mentorship or program, because if it wasn't for the fact that I was asked to, I guess, nominate for this role, I'd be terrified, and I still am terrified, because I'm you get that feeling like, do I deserve a seat at the table? Even though, I mean, I think I'm more than capable, but I mean, you know, it's a hard balance between, you know, my dad's generation with myself, but essentially where the farmer's coming through to continue on, and my dad should go fishing soon. So essentially we want to, I guess I would like to see some type of mentorship program, some type of engagement program, maybe doing things like Zoom. Like, I don't know if I necessarily would want to always be going into the city just for a quick meeting, but now with something like Zoom, we can absolutely have more programs with our younger generation coming through. Maybe with someone like myself sitting in a position like this, maybe it's more incentive to, you know, step up and actually walk out of mum or dad's shadow in that sense. And I met some amazing younger people at the 40th birthday dinner last year. So things like that, like I was almost like, oh, am I the only one left? Because you have this sort of mentality, am I all that's left? So having these networking things and moving forward with things like Zoom and social media aspects, and we can really drive a whole new generation coming through. And I'm sure they've got the most incredible ideas to give. So there's a few avenues, and I really think we can sell the next story, which I think Woolies, Coles, Aldi, all them are killing us with in the market. They're essentially writing the story for us, but why are we letting them? It's our story. So, I mean, this younger generation can now use all their social media and the platforms that we've been given just purely by birth, and move forward with our story and move forward with the VFF with more members coming through at a younger age group. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Robert, same question.
Can you just repeat that question, please, Jolie?
What can we do to retain young people in the industry?
Right. In the industry, as farming as a whole, to retain young people, we're going to have to somehow get more money for our commodities, because the biggest driver for young people walking away is there's nothing for them at the end of the day. They work their guts out and they don't get compensated for it properly. And you can go into the city and do an easy job and get paid handsomely and go home and have no worries. Whereas out here, you bust your guts out. You work so hard, at the end of the day, you got nothing, and you think, why am I doing this? Like, we've got to actually bring our monetary, bring our worth up so that people actually want to be here. That's the saddest thing, that they think that there's no money in it at the end of the day and there's no future. And if you can't keep a business running, as a lot of them can't now, and they're going broke, how do you retain new people? We've got to be able to get the money back into farming, and that's, the city people have just got to pay for the produce. It's pretty simple. We've got to be paid.
Cool, thanks, Robert. Emma.
We have to actually, we do have young people who have tried to knock on the door at the VFF, and we haven't done a very good job of listening to them. We had a group called YAPS that has largely almost disbanded. I mean, people are there, but what we do is we say, these are the young people and these are the other people. And the other people are the ones that sit at the table and make the decisions, and they're the ones that drive the policy through the organisation. And the young people can meet up and they can have guest speakers and they can eat a chicken parmigiana and they're going to love it. The reality is that there are young farming groups that are littered all the way across the state, and it's actually not, it's not about what can we get out of them, it's actually what we should be giving to them. So we should be providing those groups with the resources that they need to actually expand their groups, to come together, to share information, to share knowledge, and to be a community with each other. We actually have to ensure that there's no barriers to actually allowing people, young people, to sit at our policy making tables. We have to invite them into the fold. It's just not the reality of the VFF at the moment. And I actually think that the more young people that get tapped on the shoulder and actually invited into that fold, it just transpires by itself, because people see an organisation, they see people that are like themselves, and they believe that they're welcome. If you don't see a reflection of yourself when you go to any forum, you just inherently believe that it's not a space for you. So we actually have to start changing the way that we promote the organisation. And actually, again, it's that tap on the shoulder. That's how I became involved with the VFF. I was given a tap on the shoulder. Someone said, we want you to come along to this thing. And next thing, now I'm transitioning through the organisation because I was given that opportunity by someone. But if that opportunity wasn't presented to me, then I probably wouldn't have naturally thought about the VFF. I still feel like I'm possibly in the minority when it comes to leadership at the VFF. And that's just what we've got to change, because young people will attract more young people.
And lastly, Leonard.
Young people. I work with 3 young people every day. So, but in my own area, last year, I took on the chairmanship of the land care group, and then a life member of the VFF, Ian Hastings, and myself, and another farmer, Alan Lynch, and another guy and my wife, we all decided that we would hand the organisation over in 12 months' time to a group of young people. So we set about to train them and teach them how to do things and engage with people. Unfortunately, coronavirus has got in the way of a lot of that. But the point is that we had to tutor those people out on the farms and in our regional areas, so to give them the confidence to come to other forums and involve themselves in other forums. And that group of young people, there's about 8 or 9 of them we've got, have come a long way in 12 months, and they've now got confidence to do and speak to people and do that. It starts there, and then encourage young people to come to meetings and sit in on meetings. And my livestock council would be the youngest livestock council that's ever been in existence, I think, in the time of the VFF. And they're a great group of young people. Unfortunately, there's none in their 20s, because when you're 20, you're too busy having a hell of a good time and trying to make money and start a business. And so they tend to come along when they're in their 30s, when life's settled down a little more. And I think our expectation of having people pre-30-ish into the organisation having an active role, I know I did personally, but you have to have a hell of a family backup group to help you to do that. And it's very difficult. And Danielle's one of the people, she's in the pre-30 group, and so her family network has enabled her to do that. And we need to encourage the farming families who have got young people to show them that they can let them go off and do these jobs and contribute. And that makes it much easier when you've got that family back up at home. It's very difficult when you're a sole trader on your own as a young person.
Thanks, Leonard. Thanks, candidates. Some great answers there. And we're getting lots of questions coming through the Q&A function, so I might pass over to Bryce who'll go through those.
Thanks very much, Jolie, and thanks to the VFF for the opportunity to help MC tonight's forum. Lots of questions coming through, and don't forget that if you do have a question, to submit it in the Q&A forum. A fairly easy one to start with for all the candidates, and this question is from an anonymous person. We've decided not to reveal who's asking the questions tonight, so people can have confidence that we will ask the questions, and they don't have to be afraid of who they are or where they work. The first question tonight, though, is how do members have confidence that you will do what you have said you will do? And that goes for everything you've said tonight, why you're running for either the presidency or vice presidency. Let's start with Emma to kick things off.
I guess the members don't, if they haven't come across you yet, they don't know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, but I guess that stands for everybody. The best indicator of future performance is past performance. And I think that it's interesting because we go into this campaign time and it's all around this 4 weeks worth of convincing people who they should vote for. But the reality is we have a track record. We have those networks, we have relationships. So I think that the best thing to do is say, well, what have these people done and how have they advocated on my behalf, and is that person the person whose face and voice I want representing me. And you know, both myself and Leonard have a history with the organisation where you can see that. Other than that, does it make sense? Do the questions that we're answering right now, does it make sense to you? Other than that, people get the opportunity to turf someone out in the excellent democracy that we are.
Thanks very much, Emma. Leonard?
I think my track record is livestock president, and in the previous life to that at PrimeSafe. I upset a lot of people at PrimeSafe in the industry initially by bringing about enormous change, cultural change and professional standards into that organisation. When I started in the livestock group, I was fairly unpopular, but people soon learned that what we said we did, and we followed through with it, and we developed policies and made changes to the livestock industry that were relevant to farmers and made their farming businesses better. But we also built the relationships within the supply chain with stock agents, transporters and meat packers and meat processors and exporters. And so today, the livestock group has a really good relationship, individuals in the livestock group and myself, with individuals throughout the supply chain. And so we have a communication network there that allows farmers to directly input into those people. And that's a huge benefit. And that's what we've been able to do through strong, consistent representation of the farmers' interests. We're not there to win friends. We're not there to line our own pockets. We're there for the farmers and for the supply chain and providing food to the nation and exports. And that's our driver, and that's what I've been doing.
Thanks very much, Leonard. Robert, to the vice presidential candidates, why do you think people should have confidence in you that what you say you're going to do, you will actually do?
Oh, well, how do you give people confidence? That the only way is through actions, and you're only one on a board of how many? All you can do is try. We're here to have a go. We're going to give it a red hot crack, and if the board doesn't come through, well, we've tried. I don't know. Pretty hard question to answer.
Thank you very much, Robert, and good job answering it. Finally, Danielle.
The good old saying, I guess, trust is earned. So I guess I would have to prove that, but I guess for people to understand a little bit more about me, so over the last sort of 4 or 5 years when I've worked in the egg industry and the policy side and the advocacy side, it's all been on my own time. I essentially wrote my submission for the trespassing inquiry the day I gave birth. Like, I really believe in the cause, and I believe in our right to farm and showing that. So everything essentially I've done up until now has been quietly in the background. But I guess now this would just be at the forefront and you'd be able to see it. So quiet, or I'll continue quietly doing it from the background. Either's fine.
Thanks very much, Danielle. Moving on to our next question, and don't forget you can submit your questions in the Q&A forum on Zoom. This one is for both presidential candidates. The question is, how do presidential candidates plan to attract new members to the VFF, and what strategies would you use to boost membership dollars? Let's start with Leonard first this time.
To attract membership, you have to show strong and accurate leadership, and not be wandering all over the place with policy or where you are on a particular issue. You need to be very strong and concise, but you also need to take the members with you and not expect them to catch up afterwards or be told later on. We need to bring those along with us. And so that's what I've always tried to do, be all inclusive and bring people along in policy development. And that will enhance the people wanting to come join the VFF. But we need to change the way people fund the VFF and the expectation, and it's been mentioned previously tonight about the free rider aspect of it. And people, there is a large group of farmers out there today have the attitude that, well, someone else is paying for it, I don't need to. And we need to change that mindset that everyone needs to contribute to the benefit of all of us.
And just on that, Leonard, if you say you want to change the way, I suppose, the VFF is funded, what system would you put in place to make that happen or change it?
I outlined that earlier on I'm very strongly in favour of a levy-based system, which is a very low cost per transaction. And that's, and you've got to remember that the grains industry already has a grains levy for the grains group members, and there are levies in other commodities as well. And so farmers are very familiar with paying levies and they're comfortable with it, provided those monies that they pay are used sensibly and held to account for where the money goes. It's not wasted. They're quite comfortable with that.
Thanks very much for that, Leonard. Emma?
We have to drive more outcomes for farmers, and we have to be able to justify that we're driving those outcomes. When people are happy with a service, they return. If you like the taste of your coffee, you go back to the same coffee shop and you buy the same coffee. We have to make sure that we've got enough people engaged, that everybody feels like their voice is heard. And I think that we have to change the way that we do that engagement from a policy perspective. There has to be more digital tools. There has to be like a case management system, like a triaging system that is actually, you're able to see the policy passage through the organisation and how it went through, what we did to justify that it was reflective of grassroots farmers. Make sure that we have to have really robust policy setting, because once we've got that, then we can go out and stand really firm with our advocacy. It's when you don't feel like you are making the popular choice, or when you feel like you don't have the army behind you, that advocacy starts to wane. So again, it's got to be about the whole army doing that. We also need to start raising up the leaders out in the regions. There are all of these people that do get together in all of their different interest groups. We need to tap into them. At the moment, we say we're the VFF and they should sign up a membership, but we don't go actively looking at the people who are doing a great job. Whether you open up the Stock and Land or the Weekly Times or any of the agricultural media, you flick the pages and you see these really awesome, young, innovative farmers doing amazing things. Those people are not the members of the VFF. We have to tap them on the shoulder and we have to say, what is it that would make you be engaged with this organisation? How do you want the organisation to speak to you? How do you want to input into that organisation? Or is it something that you just see as in the background, I might call when I need to, you want to be a passive member? We haven't asked people how they want to be engaged with, and we sit here and we say, oh, we're going to do this, that and the other. We have to ask the people what it is that they want. And the survey that we undertook was a great start, and it got a very good pulse on what people were thinking about us. But now we have to drill down further. I think we've, from that survey, really well articulated and understood the why for the VFF. But now we actually have to start asking the question around the how for the VFF. And I'll tell you that young people, and not just young people, in fact, lots of people that I've been to meetings with, do not want to be sitting in a meeting until 1 a.m. where the same issue that's been discussed for the last 10 years, where there feels like there's no outcome, gets discussed over and over and over again, and we create a resolution and we second it and then we take a vote on it, and then it might get up to conference once every 12 months. Advocacy just happens so much faster than that now, and we've got to make sure that the VFF has the tools to keep up with the way that we're communicating with each other, and the way that we engage with each other, and the way that we set that policy.
Thanks very much, Emma. Moving on to the next question, and quite a lot to get through. This question is about the dairy industry, and we've had a lot of questions about this tonight. The question more broadly is the dairy commodity is currently undergoing a comprehensive restructure, including for advocacy. Do candidates see this as a threat to dairy's continuing membership of the Federation? We'll start with Emma this time.
As long as there are farmers in Victoria, the Victorian Farmers Federation has a place to advocate for them. I think that it's absolutely responsible that for the VFF to actually listen to what our grassroots dairy farmers want in regards to their commodity-specific advocacy. If the dairy farmer believes that his advocacy or her advocacy is done best in a particular forum, and that is an overwhelming response from the dairy industry, then so be it. We have to listen to that. But what the VFF must stand for, given that there's lots of different industry groups in regards to commodities, what we must have our resources dedicated to, what we must have our energy poured into, is the stuff that affects all farmers. And that's something that was really clear in the survey that we actually sent out. Farmers believe that they need the VFF, and when they need the VFF, it is irrespective of what commodity they grow, where in the state they grow it, or how big their business is. So if we're constantly focusing our energy in those core issues that affect all farmers, then dairy farmers will have a place at the Victorian Farmers Federation, irrespective of how they choose that they want their commodity-specific advocacy and policy creation to happen.
Thanks very much, Emma. Leonard, your response to the same question.
I've kept an eye on the dairy plan development, and from my observations of it, it seems to be very top down. And I don't believe that the grassroots dairy farmers are that much in tune with it. And they understand that we have a state-based government system in this country and a federal system. And we need representation at both the state and federal level. And the dairy farmers understand that, I believe. And they want their state to be represented in Spring Street and in any other forum in Victoria, but they also want national representation for export markets due to the fact that the Victorian dairy industry is so heavily reliant on exports. And so they understand that, and I'll go back to my original comment about the dairy plan. From my observations, appears to be from the top down, and I do not believe that structures or policy ever works very well when it goes that way.
Thanks very much, Leonard. And just another dairy question while we're on the subject. This comes from another person. The question is, many UDV and VFF dairy members affected by the dairy crisis have expressed concern in a lack of support and some things that damaged the dairy industry to the extent it did. Members are now commenting that decisions like minutes not being allowed to be read by members is concerning. What do you not want members to see? Leonard, I will hand to you for the response to this question first.
My belief about VFF minutes of meetings, once they've been ratified by the people sitting in the room that they are true and correct, they should be available to the members. Unfortunately, we live in the modern electronic era where a document can be copied and changed and made to look like the original document very easily by someone who may not be acting in the best interests of the farmers or the VFF. And so we need to have a system put in place where members can read those documents electronically, but they cannot be copied and interfered with. And that is my concern. But by all means, the members are entitled to read the minutes of any meeting.
Thanks very much, Leonard. And to Emma, your response to that question.
Leonard and I often disagree, but this is something that we absolutely agree on. I believe that there should be complete transparency around the availability of minutes. I mean, at the end of the day, it's members who fund the organisation for minutes to be created in the first instance. But we do have to ensure that what we're trying to capture in the minutes are the ideas and the way that things have been formed, and that the minutes are not used as a weapon against people. Because once you get to the point where the reason why people want to see the minutes is because they want to know who to blame, then we take away that trust in a meeting where people are actually really free to express their ideas and have healthy debate. I actually think that debating is the most important thing that we can be doing at the organisation, so that we thrash out our ideas and we become, it's our job to argue behind closed doors, but to be able to get to a point where we feel comfortable enough to agree and move forward with unity when we're actually lobbying or advocating external to ourselves. But minutes should be something that are made available, as Leonard said, once they've been verified as true and accurate. But we also need to really work out what we're getting hung up on in the minutes in the first instance. So documenting outcomes, making sure that there's action items that are going to be followed up by a particular date. But minutes are not something that says this person said this, that person said that, so we know who we're going to go and blame at the end. At the end of the day, councils need to operate effectively even when they disagree.
Thanks very much for that response. Emma, the next question, before we move into a question for all candidates, is do candidates intend or have any intentions to sell Farrer House for cash for marketing? I'll hand to Leonard, I think, for this, or Emma actually, sorry, I think it might be your turn.
No, I think that we have a blue chip investment where we are. It has been an underpinning factor of the ongoing success of the VFF, or our longevity and our sustainability. Anybody who sells an asset that gives passive income is, in my opinion, making a bad business decision unless they're going to be replacing that with another asset that gives more passive income. What I do think about Farrer House is that like the rest of the organisation, needs to be modernised. We need to take it from a B grade building to an A grade building, and we also need to be unafraid of looking at the opportunities in regards to development, which is something that, again, location is unbelievable. It's given us a home in the city right now. Spring Street, which is, you know, the bricks and mortar, the members are very attached to that, and I understand why. At the end of the day, I think Farrer House is going to be a part of the ongoing success of the VFF for many years to come.
Thank you very much, Emma. And Leonard, your response.
Farrer House is not for sale, period. However, I would also emphasise that I will not be mortgaging it to the value of the building, and also the investments of the respective commodities, and the VFF will be administered in a wise way and protected for the future generations, and the commodities should have control of their own finances when it comes to their own commodity investments.
Thank you very much, Leonard. This next question is for the two vice presidential candidates. The question is, how can we help the public to have a better understanding and respect for farmers in agriculture, and what image we should be presenting to the public? Danielle, I might throw to you first.
So we have a community engagement program on our farm, which we've instilled over the last, I guess, 2 years now, from everything from going to local schools to local community groups. And I personally go out and we debunk all the myths of the caged egg industry, and we talk about all the questions that are out there and all those awful social media things. So community engagement's a huge one. And then essentially, if we get out there and we're showing our face, and this doesn't have to be like physical going out and sending farmers to X, Y, and Z. This can be as easy as a quick video that's placed on social media, faces of the VFF or faces of the farmers' faces, or whatever you want to call this new little program. We do it, but we don't use our social media on the VFF very well. We use Twitter, which I get, it's a policy, it's very much politics on Twitter. But if you want to start engaging my generation, you want to get to uni students who essentially are the ones who turn over to our animal activist side or the vegan foods, which I'm all for, but aren't. Ideally, we need to start using things like your TikTok, your Instagram, your Facebooks, and I think there's a whole untapped market of social media, which is super cost effective and so easy to take a quick video on your farm, and essentially getting, I guess, the public on our side. I believe with a strong united front, we can do that. And they then tell the story for us. So then when they're sitting at their dinner table and little Johnny's heard my story of caged eggs, for instance, and he's like, but Mum, you know, Danielle told me, the conversation becomes open and it becomes wider. And Woolies, I think it's Woolies who did it so well, where they started putting the farmer's face for carrots and for whatever veg they're selling that week. I mean, they told our story in their way. So why not come back and utilize the faces of the VFF and move forward together? So it can be done. It's just we just need to change the platform. That's all.
Thanks very much, Danielle. And to Robert.
Yeah, along similar lines to what Danielle was saying, we've got plenty of technology we can use, but we can also go into schools. To try and bridge the divide, we can try and get education into the children. And once it's in their mind, it doesn't come out. So it's another thing we could look at, but we've got to try and bridge the divide, because there's a lot less people have roots in regional Victoria now, or regional Australia. Most are city-centric. But as everyone does now, there's plenty of videos out there of happy things going on in farms and on Twitter and Facebook and everything else. So we've just got to get smarter on how we use it, and just be careful of what goes out. Sometimes the content's not the best, the best sort of content you want to show about farming, but it happens, and we've just got to make sure that we show the best side that we can.
Thank you very much, Robert. A couple of questions to get through, and candidates, we will try and finish in about 7 or so minutes, or 8 or so minutes. So if we can keep the answers brief, that would be much appreciated. This next question is directed to both Leonard and Emma. The question is, as President, will you undertake to honour agreements made within the VFF over many years regarding the ownership and management of the Grains Group deed poll funds? Essentially, that the deed poll funds are there for the benefit of the Grains Group, and that spending of those funds are directed by the Grains Council. I'll throw to Leonard first.
My personal view of the Depol Fund is that it was a very interesting way of gaining long-term sponsorship for the Grains Group, and the Grains Group have managed to invest those funds to provide funding to the Grains Group on an investment they made in GrainCorp, and therefore they have the right and the ownership of those funds forever and a day while I'm alive. There's no question about it.
Thank you very much. And to Emma?
I really get concerned when people believe that it's a president who sets the financial policy of the organisation. There's no such thing. It's not a dictatorship. There's a finance and audit committee. There is a board of directors where the Grains Group is represented, and essentially we make these decisions collectively and together. Having said that, I also find it interesting when some Grains members, not all Grains members, but some Grains members believe that they're getting a benefit when actually the Grains Group, through many different mechanisms, actually fund the organisation. So the Grains members on average are spending more money per member, more dollars per membership. They are contributing because their staff do a lot of cross-commodity work on behalf of the rest of the organisation. Under the common service fee, the way that the organisation is financially structured at the moment, the Grains Group are actually funding quite a lot of the organisation, and I actually don't think that that's fair. In regards to any of the funds that are from a commodity-specific fund or from something historical, they should be put back into the industry that they come from. But where those funds are used are important. So we should be investing again into our future and into our young people and the people coming through. But we shouldn't use any funds in the organisation so that one commodity gets ahead and another commodity falls behind, because that means that we're not doing a good job of representing all farmers as our members have expressed they want to happen, irrespective of commodity, irrespective of place in the state, and irrespective of size. So when the Grains Group members are paying more than everybody else, I actually think that that needs to be absolutely rectified. And as Leonard mentioned in regards to going into debt against our building, we shouldn't be going into debt against our building whilst paying out dividends to an internal group of the VFF. So this question is bandied around as something that's really simple, like, oh, who's going to steal the grains deed poll funds? And it's actually far more complicated than that. And the grains growers right now, it's the grains members who are actually funding the organisation at a higher membership fee in order to get those dollars come back round to them. So there's this big convoluted story going on, and we actually have to simplify the finances. But yes, just like the Grains Group have invested in the organisation in one way, we also have the Flower and Garden Show, the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, that 50 flower members essentially have contributed to the organisation. So when you start looking at a per capita rate in regards to how people invest, it's just not as simple as who's honouring old agreements made within the organisation. But yes, grains funds should go back to grains growers.
Thanks very much for that, Emma. A question about culture now, and a fairly important one. The president of the VFF, this is the question I might add, the president of the VFF is also the chair of the VFF board. Do you believe culture comes from the top, and what culture will you encourage around the board table? I'll let Emma answer this one first.
I feel like I'm answering all of them first, Bryce. Yes, I think, no, that's all right. I think that culture absolutely is set at the top, because it's the top that essentially says what type of behaviour, whether it's at the board or the whole way throughout the organisation, what type of behaviour do we want to emulate, and how do we want to treat each other as members? How do we want to treat the organisation? So absolutely, it comes from the top, but really it kind of ends up being driven from the grassroots, because they're the people that the culture actually impacts. So if it's not in step with what the grassroots farmers and members want, then you're going to be missing the mark in any case. In regards to leadership style at the board, we do often strive for consensus, and I do think that that's sometimes held the organisation back. It again is about being able to have those robust discussions with each other, and then honouring the things that we say when we're in a group together. So saying something at the board and then going out together as board members who ultimately support each other is really, really important. We have to stop this divisiveness at the VFF. I actually think that that has permeated through the culture, and that's one of the things that I think needs to be rectified in regards to this unity amongst the commodities. Terrific.
Thanks, Emma. And to you, Leonard.
Culture certainly sits on the shoulders of the chairman, there's no doubt about that. And my track record in the livestock group, the fact that I was strongly supported by the Livestock Commodity Council to stand for this position, they feel very confident that I have the ability to lead a group of people and cross the state into a better position with the VFF. And that came from a cultural change within the council over a couple of years. And so, yes, it definitely comes from the top, but it also breeds better culture. So if you have good, clean leadership at the top with clear decision making, then everything else flows from that. It flows into the staff as well as the membership.
Thanks very much for that, Leonard. And another question, we'll try and squeeze two more in before we wrap things up tonight. The second last question, please ask candidates if they are standing for the role of president or vice president for a move into a political career like so many have done before. Leonard, I'll throw to you first, and this will be a question for the candidates.
I think my wife will kill me if I take on a job after this one. My sons would probably say, yes, Dad, you can go and do something else as well. But no, I have no political ambitions whatsoever beyond this job.
Thanks, Leonard. Emma?
I am not going to rule out where a future what might bring me. I certainly don't want in 20 years' time someone saying, oh, but on a forum for the VFF, you said you would never go into politics. So I'm not going to say I'll never go into politics. However, I will say that I am completely a person who is from the centre. I'm not a member of any of the political parties, and actually my job right now is to represent farmers. I'm not. People try and put all of these things onto you, like, are you doing it for the women? Are you doing it for the young people? Are you doing it for the Greens? And the answer is I'm doing it for the farmers. I'm doing it because I understand the impact that policy and environment has on the way that I farm. I believe that I can be of service to people, and this is where I found myself. So this is not a bid to become a politician by any stretch.
Thanks very much for that, Emma. Danielle, a career in politics, is that something on the cards?
I'm sitting here today nominated because I've been lucky enough to be mentored by Leonard over the last, I don't know how many months now. So I don't know Leonard's mentoring me into politics, that's for sure. It's more of just getting an overall understanding of farming, because I had the time after getting pregnant, and I took an interest in the egg industry. And he said, do you want to learn more about farming as an overall? But like Emma, I mean, maybe I have a long way to go still. So that's not to say in 20 years I won't sit somewhere else, maybe my sister kicks me out of the farm. I have no idea. But over the next 10 years, I hopefully will learn all I possibly can and stick to my day job, which I'm pretty good at. So, yeah.
Thanks very much, Danielle. And just a quick question to follow up with that. You have openly backed Leonard essentially as a running mate for his role as president for the VFF. Do you think that if Leonard loses his position or loses the election and Emma is elected president, your position would be compromised?
No, so I would hope Leonard would keep mentoring me in the great form that he has been. But I once said to Emma a few years ago, which always embarrasses me, I was like, I'm your biggest fan, because Emma showed me the diversity of having a younger female in the VFF. So at the same time, my job will be to do my job and represent farmers despite who is sitting in the presidential role. And I mean, I'm all for whatever happens, but essentially Leonard's the one who's helped me get here. So, but I will be happy either way. And I feel like members should be pretty ecstatic with whoever they vote in.
Thank you very much, Danielle. And we'll make it the final question tonight for Robert. We are unfortunately out of time, but Robert, a career in politics, is that something you're aspiring to do perhaps down the track?
Not at all. No, I'm just going to stay farming. Yeah, it's not for me.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. Nice, short and sharp, and we do appreciate that. That's it for me. Thanks so much to the candidates for being so honest and articulate in your answers. I'll hand back to Stephen Sheridan now, who will wrap things up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bryce. And just in wrapping up, I would like to thank both our facilitators tonight, both Jolly and Bryce, have done a fantastic job. Importantly, of course, thanking our candidates for putting themselves forward. It's not always easy to put yourself forward in such a public-facing position as this, especially as a candidate in an election. So thank you to Emma, Leonard, and also Danielle and Robert. It is absolutely fabulous to have a well-contested election like this. I would also like to reiterate what I said at the beginning, which was voting is still open till the 8th of December. And when it closes at COB that day, you can still vote by going online. If you're having any difficulties, you can go to our webpage at VFF or ring our 1300 number. So that's 1300 882 833. Or email us at vff@vff.org.au. But by all means, please give us a bell. And in closing, I'd also like to thank you, the members, and hope you've enjoyed tonight. Hopefully it's been informative, and we look forward to catching up with you in the very near future, and hopefully out there actually in the country now that we're out of lockdown. So thank you all, and good night.